In horse racing, history is brutally selective. The cameras follow the trophy, the fans cheer for the champion, and the world only ever remembers the winner. Right now, every headline belongs to Golden Tempo, the spectacular closer who conquered the 2026 Belmont Stakes and rewrote the record books. But if you pan the camera back just one single second, you will find the real heart of the 2026 classic season. The raw courage, the savage grit, and the most gut-wrenching near miss in recent memory. His name is Commandment, sired by the legendary Into Mischief. He wasn't just built to run, he was born to fight. He dominated the Florida circuit in heart-stopping photo-finish thrillers where he simply refused to let another horse pass him. Yet after one bad break at the Kentucky Derby, the public threw him in the trash and forgot he existed. But at Saratoga, he entered a bone-crushing final furlong war that proved exactly why he is the gutsiest underdog of his generation. This is the incredible rise and the savage, unbreakable resilience of Commandment. And by the time this story is over, you will never look at a runner-up the same way again. When the gates slammed shut at Saratoga for the 158th Belmont Stakes, the entire racing world had already written a script that didn't include Commandment. All eyes were locked on the favourites, treating this blue-blooded colt like mere background scenery for someone else's coronation. But Commandment didn't get the memo. He ran a flawless tactical masterpiece, tracking the pace with predatory patience and striking with absolute ferocity the moment the frontrunners collapsed. For one heart-stopping second, as he seized the lead in the home stretch, the impossible felt completely inevitable. Then came the shadow, a dark, thundering shadow rolling in from the center of the track like a freight train with no brakes. Golden Tempo. What followed wasn't just a race. It was a savage, grinding final furlong war that tested the very soul of both animals. Driven to his absolute physical limit, Commandment refused to yield, fighting stride for grueling stride, until a final agonizing lunge forced him to settle for second place by just over a length. It was a defeat that would have broken a lesser horse. But for Commandment, it cemented an undeniable truth. And one burning question the racing world still cannot answer: was this the greatest runner-up performance in a generation, or was Commandment robbed of a destiny that was rightfully his? To understand where that unbreakable will comes from, you have to look beneath the surface and examine the elite genetic architecture that created him. Commandment was no accident. He was a meticulously engineered machine, commanding a staggering $500,000 at auction from Wathnan Racing. But the buyers weren't just purchasing a striking physical specimen. They were investing in a championship blueprint that started at the very top of his family tree. His sire, Into Mischief, is not merely a successful stallion. He is a genetic phenomenon, a multi-time leading sire in North America, whose offspring are defined by blinding speed, tactical brilliance, and a relentless, almost pathological desire to win. He passes down an atomic-grade engine that allows his colts to sustain elite cruising speeds over classic distances. But raw power is only half the equation. Commandment's dam, Sippacan Harbour, was a Grade 1 winner of the prestigious Spinaway Stakes, celebrated for her explosive turn of foot and her terrifying ability to dig deeper than any rival in the dying strides of a race. That trait, she burned it directly into her son's DNA. The instinct to duel, the stamina to survive, and the refusal to let another horse pass him. It was woven into his bones before he ever saw a racetrack. And what happened next in Florida proved that every single dollar of that breeding was justified. Before the heartbreak of Saratoga, Commandment was a runaway train on the road to the Triple Crown, putting on a masterclass across a spectacular, undefeated winter campaign in the Sunshine State. But this wasn't a series of comfortable, wire-to-wire victories. This was a collection of brutal, blue-collar street fights that forged his reputation in fire. At Gulfstream Park for the Fountain of Youth Stakes, caught in tight quarters and forced to duel through blistering fractions, he refused to blink. In a heart-stopping photo finish thriller, he threw his chest out at the wire to win by a mere nose. Then came the Florida Derby, the real crucible. Against the absolute best 3-year-olds on the East Coast, Commandment found himself surrounded entering the home stretch, completely enveloped by charging rivals. It looked finished. It looked over. But instead of folding, he tapped into something deep and primal, launching a relentless counterattack, digging in the dying strides, and capturing the crown in another breathless bobbing finish that left the grandstands in stunned silence. These weren't just victories. They were character studies. They showed the world that Commandment didn't just know how to run. He knew how to look a rival dead in the eye at maximum effort and systematically break their spirit. But Churchill Downs was about to teach him a lesson no Florida morning ever could. With 2 massive Grade 1 trophies in his stall, Commandment arrived at Churchill Downs for the 152nd Kentucky Derby looking like a genuine superstar. Then the gates opened, and in the space of a single heartbeat, the dream began to unravel. He missed the break completely, lunging awkwardly and losing a crucial beat on the entire field. For a horse that thrives on establishing a forward, tactical position, this was an instant catastrophe. He was immediately swallowed up by a wall of horseflesh, forced to absorb punishing kickback while buried deep in the secondary pack. Jockey John Velasquez tried desperately to navigate a clean path through the traffic, but the Derby is merciless to any horse with a compromised trip. Commandment burned vital energy across the entire backstretch, just clawing into striking distance. Then, at the quarter pole, as he launched his rally, the real violence arrived. Caught in a brutal chain reaction squeeze between tiring frontrunners, he was knocked repeatedly off his stride, forced to check hard at the exact moment his engine was trying to fire. He crossed the wire a bitterly disappointed 7th, not because he lacked the talent, but because Churchill Downs had swallowed him whole. The public delivered its verdict instantly. The bandwagon emptied overnight, and just like that, Commandment ceased to exist in the conversation. But inside one barn, a very different conversation was taking place, and the people having it were absolutely furious. Trainer Brad Cox and the powerhouse ownership group at Wathnan Racing refused to let a chaotic afternoon in Louisville define their champion. They had watched the race, they had seen the traffic, they had seen the bumping, and they knew, with cold, absolute certainty, that the horse who ran 7th at Churchill Downs was not the real Commandment. Behind closed doors, they engineered a ruthless, high-stakes tactical pivot designed to shock the entire division. First, they chose calculated patience over desperate ambition, bypassing the Preakness Stakes entirely to give Commandment a full, uninterrupted month of recovery and reinvention. The target was the 158th Belmont Stakes, uniquely relocated to Saratoga Racecourse due to Belmont Park's ongoing renovations, and shortened to a sharper, more lethal 1.25 miles. Cox recognized this immediately as a biological gift, a distance that would weaponize his colt's high cruising speed while stripping away the brutal, bone-breaking marathon that destroys young horses. But the move that truly sent shockwaves through the industry was what came next. In a cold, executive decision, Cox replaced jockey Louis Sayers. In his place, Hall of Fame rider John Velasquez, the man with more all-time victories at Saratoga than any jockey in history. This wasn't a team heading to Saratoga to pick up a participation ribbon. This was a cold, methodical ambush. And nobody saw it coming. When the gates opened for the 158th Belmont Stakes, Saratoga immediately transformed into a pressure cooker. A wave of speed horses lunged forward, setting a blistering, unsustainable early pace designed to fry the lungs of the entire field. But inside the irons, John Velasquez was ice. While rivals panicked and pressed, he executed the pre-race blueprint with surgical precision, settling Commandment into a perfect tracking position just off the leaders, saving every inch of ground along the rail, travelling with smooth, rhythmic efficiency while conserving every ounce of fuel. As the blistering fractions decimated the pace setters one by one, Commandment remained completely unfazed, a coiled spring of weaponized patience, waiting for exactly the right moment. And while the deep closing favourite Golden Tempo was buried in severe traffic a dozen lengths back, Commandment had clear running room, a full engine, and the lead directly in his crosshairs as they hit the far turn. For one extraordinary moment, it genuinely looked like the greatest comeback story in recent racing history was about to write its final chapter. Rounding the far turn, Velasquez pulled the trigger. Commandment exploded into the lead with a burst of speed that left the grandstands gasping, the exhausted pace setters dissolving behind him as he swung into the Saratoga homestretch. For one glorious, heart-stopping second, the redemption arc felt locked in. The crowd erupted. The forgotten underdog was about to steal the final jewel of the Triple Crown. Then came the shadow again, Golden Tempo, uncoiling that devastating late-closing surge from the back of the pack, eating up ground with every thunderous stride. What followed was one of the most gut-wrenching stretch duels in recent memory. Driven to the very edge of his physical limit, Commandment did not fold. He did not panic. He did not yield a single inch without a war. He matched Golden Tempo's stride for grueling stride, refusing to break, refusing to quit, fighting with every last fibre of his being until the very final yard, where he was finally, agonizingly worn down and pushed into second place by just a length and a quarter. He lost the trophy, but in that savage, bone-crushing stretch drive, Commandment did something infinitely more powerful than win a race. He pushed the best closer in the world to the absolute limit and forced him to produce the race of his life just to survive. When the dust settled over Saratoga, the history books recorded Golden Tempo as the victor of the 158th Belmont Stakes. But history is a fickle machine. It records the names on the trophies and forgets the souls that defined the struggle. Commandment walked away from that track without the blanket of carnations, but he carried something no trophy could ever represent: the unconditional reverence of every true horseman who witnessed that stretch drive. In an era where modern thoroughbreds are whispered about as fragile and soft, this warrior stood as a ferocious throwback to a golden age of iron-hearted competitors. He rose from the suffocating chaos of Churchill Downs, absorbed every doubt the public threw at him, and delivered a flawless, soul-bearing performance on the biggest stage of the classic season. He validated the masterful patience of Brad Cox and the unwavering belief of Wathnan Racing. He exited the season not as a defeated runner-up, but as the ultimate benchmark of competitive violence in his generation. Casual fans will look back at the 2026 Triple Crown and only see the name of the horse who captured the double. But true horsemen, the ones who understand what it really costs to run like that, will always speak the name Commandment with a quiet, deep, unshakable respect. Because a warrior's true honour is never measured by the cheap gold around his neck. It is measured by the cries of the heart hammering inside his chest. Commandment gave us one of the greatest displays of raw courage the classic season has seen in years. But now the question belongs to you. Did he earn his place among the legends? Or will the history books leave him behind forever? Drop your verdict in the comments right now. And if you believe true greatness is measured by the size of the heart and not just the trophy, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Our next deep dive into racing's greatest untold stories is coming, and you cannot afford to miss it.